A disaster doesn't always mean an apocalypse or something natural. It always means that society is being tested. Society at some level is going to fail or pass the test. 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100, if we're calling it a disaster movie, society has failed that particular test.
Original Geek, that's who I am. Rolling 20s with my squad, we got a plan. Marvel heroes on the wall, D&D dice in hand. Original Geek, across the land. Level up, never gonna give it up.
Welcome to Original Geek. This is the all fandom podcast where we dig into sci-fi, fantasy, comics, and every pop culture obsession that built the multiverse we live in today. So whether you're Gen X, millennial, or just geek curious, welcome to the basement. Hi, I'm Steve Scarfo.
And I'm Jeff Shaw, and we'll be your last seat on the evacuation shuttle for today's global collapse. But before we get into our topic, we need a canon corrected.
No, sorry. Oops, that lore is no more. It is time for canon correction. All right, this is all me, and your smile on your face is way too big, for the record. And we talked about it before we started recording because I couldn't believe I got this wrong. And I had said during the last episode about Bruce Willis, I was referring to another movie called The Last Action Hero, which I somehow said was made by Sylvester Stallone, and it was not. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they make fun of the Terminator movie in a video store. They go into a video store, there's a huge cutout of what should have been Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. And I said it was Bruce Willis, but in fact, the cutout was Stallone. So I effed up the entire reference to the movie, The Last Action Hero. So if you've seen that movie and you enjoyed it like I did, it's a great, fun, fluffy kind of satire of action movies, and I thought they did a great job, but I screwed up the entire reference, so sorry about that. That's my bad. But today we're going to talk about disaster movies and what makes a movie a disaster movie. So there are a few things, right, that make a movie massive, unavoidable threat. Nature, space, tech, human stupidity, ordinary people versus an unstoppable force, and moral choices under pressure.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we chose this topic this week is because Greenland 2, Greenland Migration, is coming out. If you haven't seen Greenland, great disaster movie. Fantastic. Yeah. Came out, 2 years ago, I think? It's so good. And what I like about that and what I like about disaster movies, and this is a formula that's been a part of the disaster movie genre for decades. The golden age of disaster movies was the 70s, and a central part of that formula, including basically an Oscar-winning formula. For the Poseidon Adventure was an Oscar winner. Towering Inferno was an Oscar winner. There were some other Oscar-nominated movies that came out, like Earthquake as well. Actually, that was an Oscar winner too, just for a thing, not for its plot, but for sound effects, because it had Senso sound, which had extra bass kickers going on in the theater.
It was like today's RPX, right?
Yeah, where people complained of headaches, nosebleeds. The Chinese theater in LA actually put up netting in case the ceiling caved in during the movie.
Jeez, I did not know that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, the human element was always a part of it. But, one thing I love about, Greenland is that, unlike these other disaster movies, we're, the dramatic irony is that, obviously with all these disaster movies is that we in the audience, because we paid the price, or now we're just streaming it, we know things are about to go wrong, whereas the characters don't know that. So that's the dramatic irony and the tension and suspense that makes these things interesting. But normally in these movies, we have some expert who's saying, hey, this skyscraper doesn't have a great evacuation plan. If there's ever a fire, everyone's going to die. Hey, this ocean liner, if it hits a tidal wave or an iceberg, everyone's going to die and gets ignored. That person gets ignored. We usually have that character kind of guiding us, the scientist or expert. But in Greenland, we don't. The characters are like they're just they don't have any subject matter expertise. They're just trying to survive, which is always kind of key to these. Yeah, exactly. This is an everyman version. So that so as an audience, like that could have been us. We could have been in that scenario in these disaster movies. We can't normally be, we're not normally the volcanoologist for Dante's Peak and Volcano. We're not a FEMA expert. We're not on the front lines. We're just an average Joe. And most of these disaster movies, we're the person tumbling off the ship into the icy waters.
Well, and to your point, we usually ride shotgun with somebody who knows something. We usually are sitting beside the person who wants everybody else to be safe and doesn't know how to get anyone to understand. And I agree. I loved Greenland. I had said earlier, I don't think I'd seen the whole movie until last night. I ended up watching it. I know I'd seen parts of it, and I don't remember watching the whole thing. But when you sit with his character, you are completely clueless. And it feels more grounded. And it's not about... and I think this goes to what you were talking about with some of the classic ones, like the Towering Inferno, even like the Poseidon Adventure. Like when they made these movies, because they were using all practical effects, and we'll talk more about that stuff later, but they had to focus on story, they had to focus on character, and they had to focus on escaping this situation. And I think that's what drove them to Oscar success. Yeah, sound design for one movie, but for the others, they had this idea that it's about the people in the situation. The situation was a backdrop. And I think what's happened over the past, 20, 30 years is that shifted because of technology. Yeah, Greenland was awesome. And Gerard Butler, he's a great actor anyway, but you're with him going, I have no idea what's happening right now. Even when he gets the alert on his phone, he's so clueless. It's not like this was a thing anybody knew about.
Right.
I was like, what the hell is this? He thought it was like a prank call. Like, I don't even know what this is. And he tried to hang it up, and then it came on the TV.
Right. And I love movies like The Day After Tomorrow and 2012, these big global disaster movies. And Greenland is a global disaster movie. For those who aren't familiar with the premise, a comet, pieces of it are just shattering, and giant pieces are just hammering our planet and causing global chaos and destruction. And one bit of that comet is going to hit in a certain amount of time, and at that moment it's going to be an extinction level event across the globe. Greenland is not the first to do that.
No,
I never saw it, but I was looking this up in the 1950s. The first movie about this was called Worlds Collide, and they were building a spaceship to take off. So it was that evacuation ship, and we've seen that happen too. And what I liked about Greenland was that that's not what's going to happen. This is just a guy, your average Joe, getting his family to survival and not having the connections on to get an escape pod out of there. They were just they were going to Greenland because that's where the bunkers were that were built during World War II, during the nuclear Cold War, to survive a nuclear holocaust. Greenland wasn't going to be subjected to nuclear strikes, and therefore that was where the safest bunkers were. So yeah.
Yeah, if you think about it, when you compare it to, I laughed a little when you were talking about the the fact that he didn't have any golden ticket, right? In Armageddon, which is another Comet movie, it's all about the golden ticket. Like he's got a specialty that lets him be on the crew that has to go try to destroy the comet, and it's literally a golden ticket movie. It's about as opposite from Greenland as you can get. Another great movie and fun in all other ways, and a lot of great performances. Steve Buscemi in that movie was like, I thought he was hysterical. But this is all about the people, and I was thinking about it while you were talking, and maybe a little bit while we were talking before the show. Is, could that story have been as good if it wasn't a comet extinction level event, right? Would the story of this family getting torn apart and eventually trying to come back together as good without the backdrop of the disaster movie? And I think it would have been. I can't imagine what would have caused a lot of the things that they went through if it hadn't been the disaster. But the story of the people, what you said earlier about it's really about the human level of what we're doing.
Right. And actually, and I know, I know when I buy my ticket to go to a theater, that big screen and a disaster movie, I want that, all those effects, whether they're real or CGI. I want to see the destruction. I want to see all that. Like, that's why I bought my ticket. But like I said, all of these always have some human story, human element. And even if we don't care for it, that's an important part of the formula. Titanic, one of the most successful movies ever. And I when I went to see it initially, I was there for the sinking of the Titanic and everything that was all about that. I thought that Jack, and I'm obviously I'm the minority, I get it. Jack and Rose did not care. The whole like
the love story part of it.
Love story, which I know, like, that's what made that so successful. And really, if it was just a boat sinking, it would not have been as successful. It was their love story that was really a big part of that success. I just didn't care for it. I was ready for this for the sinking.
Well, I think in that case, and I don't think it was the first one, but they were trying to do double duty, right? They were trying to make a romantic disaster movie, right? Because in Greenland, even in Armageddon, when you kind of know, okay, the outcome is X, right? But we haven't seen X. We don't know what that looks like. Everybody knows what happened with the Titanic. If you've, been aware of history at all, the Titanic sunk because it hit an iceberg. No spoilers. But at the end of the day, we didn't, I think they were trying to figure out, well, what's going to bring people to a theater to see a movie that, is it just the spectacle of this? And I do remember it was one of the first times, like, the effects were so good because they combined CGI with practical, and like some of those scenes with the boat lifted, there was real sections that they built. But I wonder if they were just trying to go, well, how else are we going to get people in the theater? They really have to care about these two characters. And to your point,
100%.
Yeah.
It's part of the formula. I get that. And we're actually touching upon where I want to go in my flashback. So,
okay. Well, let's flash it back. I mean, not just flash it.
Let's take a trip through time. It's a Geek flashback.
All right.
Flashes.
So I never watched any of those Golden Age disaster movies. I was too young for Poseidon Adventure and all that. That by 1974, a lot of that had kind of played out, and they did like sequels and remakes, and it all kind of died out. And in the 1980s, we didn't get great disaster movies. So for me, my flashback is mid-90s Twister and Dante's Peak. So I know I talked about Titanic, and this is, a little plain to see for our geek court, I considered a disaster movie a natural disaster movie. And so for me, Twister. And for me, when I saw Twister, I thought all the special effects were amazing. That cow flying around, like, that was awesome. It was cool. And then you had like the the love story. I'm like, boring. Let's get to the action. And then
You
with
don't want to
Dante's
close
Peak-
your eyes?
yeah. Dante's Peak, I thought, like Pierce Brosnan, he was in the middle of his James Bond run. Like this was a great departure, and a big fan of Pierce Brosnan. And Linda Hamilton of Sarah Connor Terminator fame was in that, and I was a big fan of her as well. And the family, like a relationship story was not quite as played out as Jack and Rose. Like that was heavy Jack and Rose in Titanic. So we didn't have that quite. So Dante's Peak had that human element, but it wasn't overdone. Dante's Peak was a volcano disaster movie for those who aren't familiar with it. It came out in 1997. And of course, everyone knows Twister. I mean, Twister became a famous ride. We had a great sequel, 20 some odd years later? No, 25 years later, because it just came out last year. Twisters, which was fantastic.
They
But
really
yeah, so my
stretched for the title.
flashback is not having a great disaster movie until I was in my 20s, in the 90s. Like as a Gen X teen, I didn't get to go see a great disaster movie in the theater. I at Gen X 20 something when I saw it in the theater. And I know you have a slightly different recollection because you saw some of those classic movies. You go
I
ahead.
do. And again, I think I said in one of the earlier episodes, my mother not made me, but had me watch Psycho with her when I was like 8 or 10 or some crazy young number. Maybe not quite that young, but still early teens. So, we were big movie watchers growing up. And of course, when we were kids, it was all TV movies. So whatever was on TV. So we were talking about it earlier. Poseidon Adventure came out in 1972. I would have been 3. So I don't believe I saw it that young, but I think I probably saw it late 1970s, early to mid 1980s, right? When it was on TV at some point. But I remember watching Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno, probably because my mom loved them. My mom was huge into movies. Or still is, I should say. And that was her escape, was always these movies. And so I remember, Shelley, I can't think of her name.
Yes, I know exactly who you mean. And the funny thing is like because these are like all-star casts.
Yeah.
When they came out, like this was, I counted for those of you who younger generations, this had been like Avengers Endgame, where all the characters are there, all like having Paul Newman and Steve McQueen and all these other famous actors in the same movie. This was a big deal. These ensemble casts were a big deal, and so
Shelley Winters.
In Poseidon Adventure, Shelley Winters, Gene Hackman. There was so many big names in these movies. Yeah.
In those, and we were starting to talk about it before, so I'm glad you dropped us into flashback. Is they didn't have, it was 1972, right? They did not have the technology that we have. Like you said, we go today, we want to see on the 95, 150 foot screen that we're watching the biggest explosions and the best. We want all that. But those movies were story driven. They were character driven. They were just, the backdrop was a disaster. And I think that's sort of what's flipped. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while, but that's sort of why those movies got Oscar nods, because yes, in the Poseidon Adventure, this is a boat disaster like Titanic. In this case, I think the boat entirely, I don't remember if it was an explosion that happened, but the whole boat capsizes. So this is a huge, like a Princess cruise liner that's flipped upside down, and these people are trapped on what should have been the highest decks, which are now underwater, and they're making their way to the bottom of the boat. And it's, how do they get these people? And Shelley Winters is someone who's an old lady at the time, or older lady, and not in great shape. And how do they get her out? And how do they help her? And this connection between the characters, that's what made, the blend was disaster and story, not disaster with a little bit of story, or not story like Titanic was Romeo and Juliet in a boat. You know what I mean? That's what what they did. And those are both great stories, but, I think it muddied the waters, no puns intended.
Nice.
So, or maybe all puns intended. I don't know. But yeah, I love that movie. And I think it's probably what kicked off that love of this stuff for me. I also saw Towering Inferno, but I don't remember that one as much. Poseidon Adventure was the one.
Now, citing those two movies, which are largely considered to be disaster movies, I would love to take you to court about whether they really should be.
The fandom is divided. It's time for Geek Court.
All right. So, Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, ship capsizing, skyscraper on fire. Those are not natural disasters. Well, I guess there was like a tidal wave for Poseidon Adventure, so maybe we can let that one go. For me, what we're debating today is what, and I know it was our very first premise, what makes a disaster movie? For me, it has to have a natural disaster element. If it's man-made disaster, different movie. I'm not saying it's not a disaster, but it's just not what I would consider a disaster movie. And I know I'm being, very narrow-minded about this, but it's just when I go to see a movie, and I'm telling people what I'm going to go see, and they've never heard of it, and I'm saying I'm going to see a disaster movie, that's what I'm going to say if I go to see Twisters, if I go to see Greenland, if I go to see Dante's Peak or San Andreas. Those are natural disasters. That's what we're expecting when we see a disaster movie. I'm not going to say I'm going to see a disaster movie if I'm going to see Avengers Endgame, or if I'm watching The Walking Dead, or disastrous things happening. Sure, of course. But it's not a disaster movie. It's a zombie movie. It's a Marvel movie. It's a Star Trek movie. It's not a disaster movie. We wouldn't say that. You wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to see the latest disaster movie. Oh, what are you going to see? Avengers Endgame. What are you talking about? And so Titanic, when I saw Titanic, I never said I was going to see a disaster movie. I said I was going to see, I know earlier I referenced it as a disaster movie because it's widely considered to be one.
Mm-hmm.
I just happen to, I think when I go to see a disaster movie and when I'm advocating for Hollywood to continue to make them, I want a natural disaster. Anything else has a disaster in it, but is not a disaster movie. Your move, Scarfo.
So what I'm hearing is you're a bit of a disaster purist.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing, that you have this very purist view of it can't be a disaster movie if something other than natural causes or nature of some sort causes the disaster to happen.
Oh, so I thought we were going to have a debate. You've already conceded.
I'm clarifying. I am clarifying your somewhat limited viewpoint. And even if I lose, I never concede. Let's be honest. But that's not the only definition of what makes it a disaster. A disaster doesn't always mean an apocalypse or something natural. It always means, or also can mean, that society is being tested. Society at some level is going to fail or pass the test. 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100, if we're calling it a disaster movie, society has failed that particular test. And in this case, think, oh, what were you saying? It's like Star Trek made me think of Scotty with the search for the whales, because
yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
In the future,
no one called that a disaster movie. Thank you.
An alien race shows up because they're looking for the whales that they left here and we've killed them all. So we had to go back in time to get whales. Captain, there'll be whales here. That is the key. But now you have to broaden your horizon, Jeff. Broaden it out. You have to include other genres in the disaster mode. So the disaster is part of it, but just because it's also a science fiction movie or also a zombie movie. I actually think, and we're going to talk about this in another episode, but I think the ultimate disaster movie is anything that leads to the zombie apocalypse. They don't even call it a zombie movie. They call it a zombie apocalypse. So typically, there's other elements that go. So I don't think it has to be pure. Like you mentioned Avengers Endgame. Or let's think about any superhero movie. There was a movie called Earthquake in the 70s and The Towering Inferno. Both cases, well, Towering Inferno was just one building. Let's be honest. Die Hard could have been called The Towering Inferno, right? Because one building went up in flames.
Okay.
An Earthquake, of course, I think is set in LA, but the entire city is shaken to its core. And the level of disaster there is less than in most superhero movies. Look at Avengers, the very first Avengers movie, when the aliens attack and they destroy New York City. More buildings are destroyed within about 5 minutes than the entire movie of Earthquake.
Right.
So I think that you have to maybe look beyond. I don't know that we call them disaster movies, but I see that they could be disaster adjacent.
Okay. All right, I'll accept that.
You like
I'll
disaster
accept
adjacent?
Disaster adjacent movies. Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Disaster adjacent.
Love that.
All right. Now we talked about getting into it, but let's talk about how things have gone. Cause we talked about the purism. Let's talk about the where it came from and where it's going.
From floppy disks to streaming clicks, it's Geek Evolution.
Yeah, and I really do think that the reason we did not get great disaster movies in the 80s wasn't because they couldn't do it. Because obviously we had some fantastic movies in the 80s with effects, from Star Wars, E.T. There was like so many like really cool, like there's so much they could have done. They just didn't, there was kind of no new territory to explore until CGI really came into its own. Much earlier we talked about Tron. I mean, early Tron did not look great with our own modern eyes, I'm saying.
Yes.
But man, like the effects in the 90s, Jurassic Park, it like blew me away with and that was a lot of CGI in that. I mean, there's a blend of practical effects, obviously. I think, CGI, even today, a pure CGI movie generally isn't as good as one that blends some practical effects with the CGI. I feel like that has the best. And movies like that we got in the 90s that were awesome, Armageddon, Twister, Titanic, had that blend. And because of the advance of CGI, that's when, we got those great movies. Those early, movies though with the practical effects, those are pretty amazing. Because even though I didn't watch, like Poseidon Adventure when it came out, there's this image of a guy. The ship flips over entirely. This gigantic cruise ship flips over entirely. And this guy falling through what was the glass ceiling, but is now the glass floor. And he just burst through that. And it was an amazing practical effect.
Yeah, we talked about it, I think, and I'm looking at a list here. So in the 80s, we had The Day After, which is a nuclear war movie, Threads, which I've never heard of, a nuclear war movie, and The Abyss, which is, they call it an oceanic tech disaster, but as I recall, there was some sci-fi on The Abyss because there was that creature.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I would consider that more of a sci-fi. Like we were talking in Geek Court, like it's definitely disaster adjacent. This isn't pure disaster. But those were the three that came up in the research that I was doing, and none of those, I think that they went from this idea of the story, Towering Inferno, Earthquake. These are story driven, like we were talking about before. In the 90s, they jumped to Independence Day, Deep Impact, Armageddon, these huge special effects CGI movies where the story maybe wasn't as strong, as in some of the other movies. And I think what we're getting to is what you're talking about, is this idea that the story was great, but visually it was blah. I mean, not bad, but like it was okay. It's a stage, it's a set. Then they went all effect and all wow factor for the view, and they kind of forgot about, let's make it a really solid story. They were fun. Armageddon was a fun movie. Like they weren't bad, but I think one of the things Greenland really did well, and we talked about this earlier too, is it didn't have the effects that it used were great. You know, meteors falling from the sky, things blowing up, I'm sure was a combination of CGI and practical explosion. But they used it as a backdrop for a story of a family in struggle. And they brought both this disaster level, great effects, because it made it real. It made it look more real. It's one of the things why, and I might bite my tongue in 5 years, but I don't know that AI filmmaking will ever truly be a problem, at least on the acting level, because I don't know that an AI is ever going to be able to give a really great performance, right? Somewhere ChatGPT is plotting my death. Maybe Gemini, or maybe they're getting together. But I think the evolution there is sort of, God, there's an old picture. Our friend Bill Dunbar was a huge, in fact, Jim and Dave were too, but paintball players. And I remember this evolution of a paintball player image that I saw somewhere. It was like a guy, he was just in shorts and a t-shirt, and then he had longer pants, and then he had real gear, and then he had heavy gear. And as it went, as the player got more and more advanced, he went back to a shorts and a t-shirt because he's so good. He evolved from one view all the way right back to that same view, but the experience he had changed. And I think that's what's happening with disaster movies. And that might be a horrible analogy if no one's ever played paintball and know the picture I'm talking about. Maybe I'll try
no,
to
the idea that it starts with the human story and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I know like some people felt like 2012 was ridiculous because I think that was like the peak of the global effect because people wanted to see, and it's been a while since I saw that, but like you went and you saw that and you saw like Egypt getting destroyed, Paris getting destroyed, Tokyo getting, like so often, like those early ones, it was a ship, Poseidon Adventure, a skyscraper, a city, an earthquake with just LA getting affected, to flash forward to A Day After Tomorrow where we're mostly looking at New York, and New York often is a victim in these in these things because it's so iconic, you know, the buildings and the Statue of Liberty, and so when you see a tidal wave hit New York, it affects you in a certain way. And I think, it got 2012 was like the pinnacle of that, where it was global, and you saw all these things getting, all these cities and getting affected by the natural disasters. And I understand, like Armageddon, no, Independence Day. Like I would not have normally, like disaster movie adjacent, like some people would consider a disaster movie. That's not how I would describe it. But, those aliens, destroying so much of the earth in so many different iconic areas.
Yeah.
Right. And I think then you come around. So I think Greenland's a great example. Is it is a global catastrophe, but we're focused on this one family, a husband, a wife, and a son. And that's it. And you don't hardly see, except when they're watching a news broadcast, of any effect anywhere outside of their immediate environment. It was just kind of confirming what you had earlier said about, coming all the way that around where you start small and localized, then it grew bigger and bigger and bigger. Then you're kind of back to where you started with that kind of small and localized story, human story, but with the effects that we can have today. So that's, our pitch for Greenland. And Greenland
I'm actually
too.
really looking forward to Greenland too. Now, I don't want to belabor the point, but if we can take the story that we want to hear 99 times out of 100 is about the people in the situation, not the situation. You were talking about 2012, and the one scene I remember is Rio de Janeiro, the huge statue of Jesus getting swamped by this like all of Rio gets wiped out by a tidal wave. That's the one image I remember from that whole movie. And amazing to see, like so cool that they were able to do that, but it didn't impact me. What happened to the family in Greenland, every little tweak where you see the look on their faces as shit's going wrong, that really hit you.
Yeah, because like that would happen to me. Like if there was, the bottom line is that although these things are fantastical, what I think is so effective about a natural disaster movie is that they're you're in that kind of what if, like, oh my God, what if that happens to me? Because my wife's reaction to as kind of rewatching a lot of these disaster movies, she's like, all right, now we got to become preppers. We got
yes.
We've got to start stocking up on dry goods. We've got to build our bunker. We've got to get ammo and guns. And
it definitely made me think we need a bunker. I was like, holy shit.
Made me feel good about living in the highest point. I live in Epping, New Hampshire, and at the highest point in Epping, New Hampshire. Okay,
which isn't really saying a lot for high points, like elevation wise.
We're not like in the Rocky Mountains. Or anything.
You might be at like true. 25 feet versus 10. Like
right. Well, when that first tidal wave hits,
yes, hopefully
I'm okay. It's the second one that's going to wipe me out.
It'll stop at Rye. It's fine.
That first one is not going to hit me.
Listen, we're so far inland right now that a good tidal wave just gives us oceanfront property. That's all it's going to do.
Your kids don't know how good you've got it.
I mean, we've got some great disaster movies that people can go back and watch. I also think, as I'm looking back on some of them, that I was because I rewatched Dante's Peak, and there's certain like effects. I'm like, oh my God, that we can do so much better today. But yeah, they were great at the time. At the time, I didn't feel that way. So, as far as the message to the new generation, though, that I feel is interesting is, that as I'm watching this thing and I'm watching like the natural disaster movies, and you hear the scientific expert and everyone gets ignored, and the message I have is, I know we've been trying to get this message across for decades now, and not that scientists get everything right, but maybe, I don't know, just give them a good listen. Like, don't immediately tune them out. Like, when you get that warning about that contagion, about that comet, about that earthquake, that volcano, what can it hurt to take a few precautions? We've had a number of these stories. Do they all come true? Of course not. But I think it's interesting that Contagion, when that movie first came out, I can't remember exactly when it was, didn't do as well as it did on the number of rewatches it got during COVID exceeded its original watch count.
Contagion was 2011, and it was in fact, of course, a pandemic movie.
So, I mean, like, we shouldn't have to be in the pandemic or in the volcano or in the tsunami before we take like that movie seriously. And then, hey, wasn't there a movie about this? Let me give that a watch.
Did you see the movie Don't Look Up?
No.
It was 2021. Good. I think it's Jennifer Lawrence and it's a couple others. It's got
about people ignoring the experts.
It's 100% what you're saying. It's a satire of disaster movies. It's essentially a planet killer kind of thing, I think. But it's basically, and I think it is Jennifer Lawrence. She comes, I might have to canon correct, but I'm pretty sure it was her. It's the whole thing you were just talking about. She's the specialist. She knows what she's talking about, and she goes to the government, and everybody ignores her. And then, of course, most people die because it's 4 years old at this point. it's exactly all the things you were just saying. That there was a move, like this person trying to tell them, and nobody listens to her.
Right. And the thing is, like, as we watched some of these, and I know, one of our plans is to talk about these zombie apocalypse movies, Fallout and all that. Science fiction, and I know I said this last year, I think, when it works well, is really about our current state. People watch that like, oh, wow, 500 years from now, that's what it's going to be like. No, that's a commentary on today's society.
Yes.
Like, you're supposed to be, that message is supposed to be sinking in now. like don't just sit back, put your brain on hold and get entertained, but listen to the messages. Like, watch the Orville. I know it's probably not coming back, and but man, that, like, and Star Trek does the same thing, but Orville was so good at really being, a funny, sci-fi look at our current society, and so that's my message to the new generation is watch these movies. Don't just get entertained and think, oh, that can't happen. That's crazy. It could happen. And maybe we all have to become doomsday preppers.
My message is prep for doomsday. No, I'm kidding. I think my message is more, and I agree with all that, but like in terms of the movies that you're watching and the disaster stuff, don't discount a smaller, I'm going to call it a smaller movie like Greenland, right? We talked a lot about this movie. We were excited for the second one to come out. Yeah, the big spectacles are great, but don't overlook the story, right? We want that blend Jeff was talking about earlier. And that's what I think. Don't just discount a movie because it doesn't look spectacular or monstrous or huge, but, depending on who you are too, just if there's a particular actor that you like, there's certain things, certain people, if they're in it, I don't care what it is, I'll go watch it. But for specifically these kinds of movies, don't overlook a good story just because it may not have the biggest special effects or the biggest CGI. We talked about movies that hopefully some of you guys will go back and watch. And if you're our age and you've seen them, go back and watch them again. Poseidon Adventure. Those are great movies. Yeah, it's not always about the spectacle. But now we're going to talk about the things we did like and the things we didn't.
It's critical hits and epic fails.
All right. You want to roll us out?
No, I've got an epic fail, so you go critical hit.
Okay. Well, I don't think it is a surprise that my critical hit is going to be Greenland because we've talked a lot about it already. So I'm not going to dig too deep. We've given you the whole premise of the movie. If you haven't seen it, go see Greenland. Morena Baccarin, Gerard Butler, the guy who plays her dad, I can't think of his name, but he's another famous actor. Great cast. Great storytelling. Even there's a couple of side characters that are like bad. They end up kind of being bad guys. Both people, I reckon, solid performances all around. Blends the CGI, everything that we said. It's a great watch. It's tense. There's no real lulls. We talked about it, I think, last time about how they'll shoehorn in a love story where they don't need to. Like, they're a married couple and they have a kid. The emotional intent and the drama and the tension is there from the beginning because it's just about saving everybody and make sure everybody gets out alive. So my hit is Greenland. Go see it. Or don't go. Just watch it online. Yeah,
watch it, stream it before the Greenland 2 comes out, and then go see Greenland 2 in the theater. I know it's been a while since we've said go see a movie in the theater, but we're saying it again. I think it was August when we were talking up the new Naked Gun. All right, so my epic fail is a movie I actually really like. I get a kick out of it. I actually bought it. I saw it in the theater. It was Moonfall. I bought it when it was available on Prime Video. So why am I calling Moonfall an epic fail? Because it's an epic fail because it pitched itself incorrectly. So it pitched itself as that disaster movie that I think about, that natural disaster, like the moon's coming closer to the Earth. And what dangers would that present? And that's primarily the way the trailer plays. So, and that entire premise is so ridiculous. And then you watch the trailer, it was full of other ridiculous things like, the character from Game of Thrones. That's that actor that's from Game of Thrones. Not the character, obviously. That would be really bad. The actor from Game of Thrones is this like social media conspiracy scientist that has like free bagels, like, hey, we're the moon's. You know, I tried to tell
John
NASA
Bradley.
the moon's. What's that?
John Bradley.
John Bradley. The moon's the orbit is getting closer to the Earth, you know, and I'm the one breaking the news, like as if every astronomy student, every guy with a telescope, and of course NASA and other space agencies around the world would already have known this. Like it's like that whole premise was so ridiculous. Of course I was going to go see it. I don't care. I'll watch B movies. I love Sharknado. But if they had
Disaster adjacent.
if they had just presented it for what it ended up being, spoiler alert, the moon is not really a moon. It's this ancient alien base that's hollow inside. And NASA knew it all along. Well, they held off the Roland Emmerich, who did some these disaster movies we've talked about in Love 2012, Day After Tomorrow. He was disaster movie overlord for the 2000s. He was the man until Moonfall destroyed his career, and it was not a success at all. I couldn't, like, it was the biggest failure in the 20s, the 2020s at least, for a box office failure. And but if they had just advertised it for what it was, which was a relatively silly concept about the moon being an ancient alien base, I feel like if they had let that be known at the beginning, that would have worked. Although I love the trailer using Bad Moon Rising from John Fogerty, a version of it. Like, I see a bad moon, and then the moon's coming in, and the bad times are on the way, and you can just see all the destruction, and we're in for nasty weather. Yeah, baby. When that moon comes in, all the weather patterns are going to be disrupted. Yes. I loved it. But man, I feel like if they had just not tried to make it seem like a normal disaster movie, like the moon is getting closer to us, when in fact, anyone that is a scientist knows the moon's actually drifting farther away from the Earth. So you've lost everyone that already knows that, which is every science teacher in the world already knows. So you've lost all of them, and anyone else that cares, and any astronomy person. So you've lost so many people that would have wanted to go see this. And you would have, but that same audience, they love sci-fi. So if you had just played that as a sci-fi movie, not a disaster movie, then it would have worked. So epic fail is how it was presented, not the ultimate product, which was just a fun movie. And had they just put it out there as a fun movie, it would have worked.
So I agree mostly. I think I disagree a little only in that it wasn't just the way it was presented in terms of the marketing, because I agree with all of the marketing issues, but it was a movie that didn't pick a lane. It was, like you said, science fiction movie, disaster movie. They couldn't figure out what they wanted to do. And had they made it just a pure science fiction movie, this is one of those things we've talked about in the past, one line of text from any one character who turned around and went, how come the moon's coming closer when it's supposed to be going further away? Right? I just fixed half your problems with that movie by one line of text. All it would have taken. And then they were also trying to be kind of playful with the moon. Let's be honest. The moon is a spaceship is a fucking weird, kind of funky topic. And they didn't play with it. They tried to make it serious. Like if it was a goofy, if it was Galaxy Quest level of silliness, like everyone would have bought in. I love Galaxy Quest. Silliest premises of in the planet for any kind of, but they try to be serious and they couldn't pick a lane. So
Right.
I think it had more troubles than just the marketing. I think he was trying to go too broad an audience.
Well, and another disaster movie by another like filmmaker that I love, M. Night Shyamalan, which it almost shows as my epic fail, was The Happening.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that movie also was a failure, and Mark Wahlberg, who was in it, tried to like distance himself from it. But one of the actresses, no, the actress Zooey Deschanel, she said that it was like a B movie. And then M. Night Shyamalan, I think, heard that. It was like, oh yeah, I was trying to make a B movie. I was trying to do like Creature from the Black Lagoon, like that kind of vibe. Like, no, you were not. And I'm like, but just like you said, like if he really was trying to do that, if that was supposed to be more like a B movie, which that's not his lane, but let's say he was just trying something new out, then maybe that would have worked. But he tried to present it as a serious movie.
He had just come off a stretch of movies where everybody was enthralled with the way he told stories. The Sixth Sense blew up, you know what I mean? The Signs was one of his movies, and it was like he tried to present it in that same vein. The one we talked about with Bruce Willis, not Mr. Glass, Unbreakable, right? He had done all of these movies, and they were all so successful. Poor Mark Wahlberg got stuck in the dumper with the one that was not good.
Well, actually, that's the thing, is like I still enjoyed it, but it was like, for those who don't know it, there's a scene where they've got to get through this house, and they know that the plants are. So the idea is like plants are fighting back against humans, and it's just because of the bad energy that humans are putting out there. Like, there's plenty of reasons you could have chosen to take the humans out, not just the bad energy. So there's this scene like Mark Wahlberg's like, hey, talking to this houseplant, hey, we're just trying to get to the back door. You know, just, if you could just let us through, that'd be great. Like, oh, come on, man.
I'll be honest, I've never seen it. And now with the description of that scene, I never will. Before
we're trying to work our way through here.
Before I have to canon correct, and actually I would not have to canon correct, I will say I just looked up Don't Look Up. Jennifer Lawrence was the star, but Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Blanchett, Meryl Streep, Ariana Grande, like it's a list of A-list actors in this satire of
that's going back to the heyday of disaster films, having a huge ensemble A-list cast like that. Yeah,
great cast in that movie. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, so I'm going to throw it in here as a last minute fail. And we almost did a whole Geek Court about this, but it's something that happened in the 90s, specifically, mostly the 90s. And that was the double up of these movies. And that is, and you've mentioned a bunch of them already. In 1998, there were two asteroid killer movies. There was Deep Impact and Armageddon. In 97, there were two volcano movies, one just called Volcano, one called Dante's Peak. And I think Volcano actually highlighted the L and the A because it was a volcano erupted in L.A. In 96, again, there were two tornado movies, one Twister, which we all love, and then one just called Tornado. They really weren't the most descriptive on some of these. And then alien invasion movies, Independence Day, again, 96, Independence Day and Mars Attacks. And Mars Attacks is just a goofy sci-fi fun movie to watch. So definitely watch Mars Attacks. But then Deep Sea, they had The Abyss, The Leviathan, Deep Star Six. Like, for some reason in the 90s, they did not check with each other at the studio level. People were shopping stories around town, and it seems like periodically two of them would go, let's buy the concept, and then they develop their own script, and then two movies would come out that were almost identical, and it happened for like a decade. That is definitely a disaster movie fail in my part. I love all of them, but this is more of a come on, guys, don't come up with something different.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny you talk about that as being a fail, and I do agree with that because I stupidly made a decision I'm going to see Dante's Peak, and I'm not going to see Volcano. I'm going to see Armageddon. I'm not going to see Deep Impact, same movie. So you're right. They killed a fair amount of their box office by not working together because in preparation for the episode, found out that the Towering Inferno was made with Warner Brothers and Paramount Studios working together. Paramount owned the movie rights to a book called The Glass Inferno about a fire in a skyscraper, and Warner Brothers owned the movie rights to the book The Tower, and they just combined it to The Towering Inferno, and they worked together to create this because they're making the same movie. It's the same movie. So
And
work
they could have
together,
easily
and they
done
made
them
something
both.
amazing.
Yeah.
And maybe if Deep Impact, Armageddon, they were together, would have made an even better movie. But those are both like good examples. Whereas I've heard, I never watched Volcano. Like I've already said, I chose Dante's Peak. But Dante's Peak, they were in a rush to be first. They released in February. They were going to release in the summertime with try to do that summer blockbuster thing. And so they cut their post-production work in half just to beat Volcano. Like, you wouldn't have had to do that if you just worked together. Or, I mean, I guess those were two very different concepts. Because one is, Volcano in the Northwest, and the other one is in the Southwest in LA.
Oh.
So, very different.
I will say too, on the asteroid movies, they're the same kind of thing, because Deep Impact is very much starts almost like a political thriller, because the main character, she's chasing a story about this woman called Ellie, who is supposedly sneaking around with the president. And it turns out Ellie is ELE for Extinction Level Event. But I mean, that's how she discovers what's going on.
That's
and
right.
that's
right.
very much presented as that political thriller. And of course, Armageddon is, again, our friend Bruce from last episode,
Yeah.
Mr. Bruce Willis on that, in a great movie. But had they put those two together, it might have made for a richer story. But I also, either that, or if you find out a rival is making a Volcano movie, don't fuck your movie into the ground by cutting post-production and making it look shitty just to get there first. It seems like the 90s was full of movie pissing contests.
Yes.
Like, who can get there first? Just make a good movie. And if someone's doing a Volcano movie, do a different disaster movie. It's fine. And maybe they just didn't have a lot of good ideas at the time. I don't know.
Or just delay release, delay it and get it even better, right? Don't cut it.
If you liked Dante's Inferno, I went classic literature. If you like Dante's Peak, you're going to love Volcano, But, all right. Well, we're running a little long, even with my cat interruption, which if I edit it out, you won't understand what that means. But I'm leaving this part in. We should have started with this. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Welcome to 2026, people. If you're still with us and you've been listening, thanks for staying with us. Check us out on all the social media. Recommend us to your friends. Leave comments on the podcast apps. We're trying to keep this thing rolling and get some growth in 2026. So we love you guys. Thanks for being here. OriginalGeekPodcast.com. Check us out on Gmail. And go watch Greenland.
Yes. And buy some OG swag. I'm wearing my King of Nightmares t-shirt you can find on our website, Original Geek. It's back from our Stephen King episode that was referenced to. And we have plenty of other merchandise tied to a variety of topics from our previous episodes. And who knows, we might have a disaster movie one coming out. And it's a great time. I think your New Year's resolution is get some of that OG merch.
OG swag. I have our original Geek podcast shirt. We got a Tron shirt. We got a Stranger Things shirt out there. Creature double feature.
Good stuff.
Check us out.